Hello and welcome to another spooky That's Just Wild Q&A, where we take on your burning questions about spooky nature and wildlife. I'm Steve Backshall, and as always, I'm joined by...
Me, Lizzie Daly.
And me, Sarah Roberts.
Come on, you didn't join in. I was expecting
Witchy
Daly,
The
Ghouly Roberts.
spooky Lizzie Daly.
I was going to be like, but you did it so well, Steve. I didn't feel like it needed extra help from us.
I'm loving that spooky laugh. Fantastic. I need to start off this episode with an apology to my long-suffering podcast partners. We are now nearly an hour late, all because I just didn't turn up in time. I have got a world-class excuse.
Go on.
I can't wait to hear it.
It's wildlife related.
Is it the dog swallowed your homework?
It's definitely better than that. So this morning, it's supposed to be rubbish weather here, but I looked outside and it was glass flat. So I decided to go for a kayak to kind of clear my head before I came on the podcast, and paddled into the biggest bait ball I have ever seen.
Don't.
Yeah.
Tuna?
So
For
saw
real?
it from a distance, saw gannets and gulls at the surface. So paddled over. It stretched out over several hundred meters. I had common dolphins bouncing alongside my kayak, a tuna the size of my boat just like rocketing alongside me, gannets plummeting in front of me. It was the most jaw-dropping single thing I've ever seen in British wildlife in my life.
Wow.
And I was sat there going, I'm supposed to be on the podcast with Lizzie and Sarah. What am I going to do?
Steve, have you got any videos or photos?
I mean, I did my best. I was literally bobbing around in my boat's a fast boat. It's not that built to be stable. And I had my phone. I didn't bring a GoPro or anything. I had my phone in my hand, trying to get shots of all this stuff that's going on around me, trying not to capsize, and also trying to get back in time for this podcast, which I appreciate. I totally failed to do, and I'm so sorry. But if anyone in the world is going to understand, it's going to be you two.
Yeah, we'll forgive you for that one.
To be honest, that's how I imagine Steve Backshall's every morning, you know, just like coffee and then just like a wildlife spectacle for breakfast. Anyway, there have been so many brilliant, unusual wildlife questions, and we could, of course, only choose one winner to get tickets for the incredible Deadly 60 live tour with Steve Backshall. But we will be answering a few of the best questions in the Q&A today. So the first question is for you, Steve, and it's the winning question from the competition, and it's from Max Westphal via Instagram. Hopefully I've said that correctly. It's a really brilliant question. Is there any creature which defies death, or what we consider the end of life, not including creatures which live a long-ass time like lobsters?
Nice. Well, the reason I chose this question, first of all, is because I know the answer, which makes me feel smug. Secondly, because it delves into a whole bunch of really interesting topics in biology, like senescence, like growing old, like the fact that most organisms, almost all organisms, will eventually, even if they live for a long time, start to break down and die. We've dealt with quite a lot of those on this program already. Things like the Greenland shark, we talked about that, right?
Super long-lived animal, you know, hundreds of years. That longevity is one of the best in the animal kingdom. So, I mean, it's quite incredible thinking about it. We talk a lot about animals that like defy odds when it comes to survival and adaptations, but the ability to just like survive for long periods of time is pretty impressive. And the other kind of group that we obviously reference quite a lot for that is jellyfish as well, right?
Oh, you beat me to it. You beat me to it, Lizzie. There's a couple of honourable mentions that we need before that. One of those is the quahog, which is a North Atlantic clam that lives for more than 500 years. Then there are some kinds of deep sea sponges, particularly those that live in very cold places like Antarctica, that can live for more than 10,000 years. But yes, the one that is the perfect answer to this question is, drumroll, the immortal jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish. What a genius name.
This is literally, though, like the holy grail for medical advances, but also for like aesthetics right now. Everyone's trying to answer that question, it feels like. How do we stop aging? Is there anything interesting about these jellyfish and the way they do it, Steve?
Yeah, very much so. And it is something that is being super well studied. They haven't yet managed to come out of any actual products that have come from studying the so-called immortal jellyfish. But let me start off by talking about what it is and how it works. So the scientific name is Turritopsis dohrnii. And essentially what happens is it goes through the process that all jellyfish do of starting as a free-swimming larvae called a planulae. And then what that will do is settle to the bottom, and then it forms into a polyp, much like a coral polyp, which will then transform into the adult form, which is the medusa or medusae. And most jellyfish go through this process through their lives, get to be an adult, free-swimming jellyfish, and then they die. The unique thing, as far as we know, about the immortal jellyfish is that in that process, if it gets to a stage where it is stressed, where it feels threatened, where it doesn't have sufficient food, it starts going back through its life cycle through a process called transdifferentiation, which is how its cells develop, and they can change into completely different cells, and they can reverse that process, which as far as we know is completely unique. So ones that have been kept in the lab without any possibility of predation have just gone on forever, and theoretically they could live for all time.
This would be like super, super integral as well when you think of genetic defaults, so like cancer treatments and things like that. If you could reverse back those cells into healthy stem cells, could be massive, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you had the option to live forever, if somebody said to you, like, we have the ability to increase even your lifespan to like 200 years, would you do it?
Who's living forever with me is the question.
Well, me and Steve. That's three
Ooh.
together.
Well, I mean, I have to say, as someone who is quite a lot older than you two, I have to say that, you know, already at my age, my body is starting to fall apart. Would I live for 200 if my body continued to decompose actively as it is doing as I'm living right now? Hell no! If I could backtrack to you guys' age with being all super healthy and feeling great, hell yes, I'd love to live for 200 years, but not how I am right now. Everything hurts already.
This is super fitting for vampires. This is real life
nice
vampirism,
link.
isn't it? I know.
Yeah, love
but
it.
it is already well underway, the research involved in this, because there are studies that have been done on mice where they've changed their genetics. So there's just one part of our replication of DNA that is actually damaged by age. So it's the little part of the mRNA that writes your DNA code. And actually, if you can fix that, then technically all of our cells would be rewritten perfectly. So we would look our best. But I always wonder, would we end up like Benjamin Button? Like, what is technically our best? You know, if we were to rewrite ourselves, where would we end up?
So I don't know if any of you have been following this billionaire, Brian Johnson.
Is that the guy that injects his own blood, does absolutely everything under the sun? He's on Netflix at the moment.
Yeah, he is on a mission to essentially reverse aging. So he's spending something like $2 million a year on changing his diet, his behavior, his everything. And I just think it's an interesting kind of, he's almost like dedicating himself to figuring out how much he can either reduce his age or keep his age kind of at a stable level. And he's 40 something now, and I think he's got the biological age of like, it seems like a 20-year-old or something. Yeah, but I mean, his lifestyle is like, he only sleeps, eats and exercises. He takes about 50 pills in the morning. He's got a bad
That's it.
like,
Is he even living?
How is he a billionaire?
so I don't know how he got really rich, but since he's got rich, he's kind of started this mission to dedicate himself to increasing his longevity, which I just don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. It feels a little bit...
It's so morally confusing, but the investment in that area is huge because there's so many people that are scared of death. You know, and so,
aging,
and
yeah.
well, and also if you think you could also reverse cancer, you could reverse Alzheimer's, you could reverse everything into your healthier cells. Like the money in the medicinal world, if you could crack that, would be huge.
For sure, yeah.
We'd all be vampires.
We'll be young again, that's for sure.
I'm loving your segue, Sarah. Really strong stuff. You should do this for a living.
I know. If only somebody would hire me.
Right, now for you, Sarah, your question is from Aaron Crossley via Instagram. Hey guys, love the pod, look forward to it every week. How do blind animals find mates and breed? I'm mainly thinking of blind cavefish. How do they attract each other when they can't see anything?
So there's a show called Dating in the Dark, Aaron, which I think will just answer all your questions. I'm only joking.
Have you been on it, sir?
No, I haven't, but it does crack me up. I love the
Is it
idea
good?
behind it. Have you not seen it? It's essentially
No.
like they do a blind date, but make it a literal blind date where they get two strangers and they film the whole thing, but they put them in a room that is pitch black. So you've got all sorts of issues
Oh,
that
God.
occur in anyway. But yeah, it's one way of breaking the ice.
I guarantee that when Aaron asked this question, this is not where he thought the answer would go.
Oh, okay. So back to topic. He was particularly interested in the blind cavefish, which are a great example of this because obviously they don't have their vision at all. They don't need it where they live. So they have been studied a lot for this particular topic. Now, the answer is all you need to do is also go back through our podcast and find the one where Steve is teaching us how to click and feel sound.
Echolocate.
Yeah. So basically they use a number of non-visual cues. They have sense of smell. They have their ability to hear, which is like echolocation, as you said. They can put out clicks, and that will give them an idea of how close something is to them. They can also
the fish
use...
can?
Yeah, these cavefish, there's been a study with the cavefish using the click systems. So this is specifically Astrianix mexicanus. So the blind cavefish, they have about 6 different sounds, including a sharp click, which is usually triggered during aggressive interactions or competing for females, particularly. They also have rumblings and clocks. So they have developed sound, which they use, and as well as you said, to kind of figure out distance between other things. They also have their lateral line, which allows them to detect changes in the movements of the water around them and the flow. And then on top of that, which is probably the main thing, is pheromones. So the pheromones in the water are the thing that are going to trigger them to go into that kind of mating response. If there's a female nearby that's, in the mood and ready, the males can detect it. And then when they've studied them, they found that their behavior, their ability to find the female, line themselves up, be there to deliver their sperm at the exact moment when the female has fired out her eggs, it's actually very, very comparable to the fish with eyesight at the surface. So they're pretty efficient at this. Efficient fish. But the key thing really is the pheromones. They're the things that are going to initiate that response in the first place.
Well, I guess we are so dependent as humans, aren't we, on our sight? And like to your point, Sarah, and to Steve's example, the echolocation, like I kind of love this question because it means that you start to think like other species and think like everything else that perhaps doesn't depend on eyesight is the main sensory system, because there are so many other senses that even we're not really tapping into and don't use. So the pheromones one, I always think of anglerfish and that extreme example of the males, tiny little males. It's one of the most extreme examples of sexual dimorphism. I know we've talked about it before, but how they travel huge distances in like this dark abyss in the deep ocean to find the females to attach onto. And again, it's all pheromone led.
I think I prefer the dating in the dark answer.
I know, I was going to say, it's all about personality, really, isn't it?
If you don't have any personality in a dark room, then you're out.
For ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com.
So, next question for you, Lizzie, is from Benny Wood via Instagram. What biological adaptation allows certain animals, e.g. marine mammals like seals and whales, to hold their breath for so long underwater? Is it to do with their red blood cells or their pain tolerance? This guy's obviously free dove before, I'm sure.
I was about to say, that pain tolerance comment is interesting. Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't been free diving or try it. Maybe don't try it in an unsafe environment. But if you try and hold your breath, at some point you will start to feel that what's known as a dive reflex, so that urge to breathe, and it if you hold it for long enough, it can be quite painful. Now, if you're somebody like Steve or Sarah who are incredible at holding their breath for long periods of time, by the way, I'm terrible at holding my breath.
Oh, I know that.
You really?
Yeah, it's something I need to work on.
You've got to do it. There's no shortcut. You just spend your time doing your tables, which are, building up tolerance to CO2 and building up your ability to store oxygen, and also being able to fight the urge to breathe, which, comes on really quickly. but most people, if they do a freediving course, will double their static breath hold in 24 hours, 48 hours of training.
Yeah.
And I know that you, as someone who is super fit, within 6 months, you get your static breath hold up to 4 minutes and beyond. But it takes 45 minutes every day of training.
And static is so different to moving as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because once you start having to swim, it all goes to pot.
Yeah, it is that resistance to the buildup of CO2. That's what you're fighting at that point. I'm just curious, actually, what is your breath hold, Steve? And like, how long did it take you to get to that point then? Was it 6 months?
To get to very nearly 6 minutes static, it took me 2 years. And I was training
Wow.
almost every day. And some of that is doing yoga and doing stretching to allow your rib cage to become more flexible and your diaphragm to become more flexible, so that you have more space to be able to get oxygen into. But also it's learning when you genuinely need to breathe. So your body will start telling you that you need to breathe when you're not even close to really needing to. Clearly, it's very, very dangerous to fight too far past it until you've figured out what your actual limit is. I've only had one shallow water blackout, and I would not want to do that again. It's horrible.
Ooh.
And yeah, I mean, your body can become really, really good at fighting that buildup of CO2. So one of the things that you might do is exercise on the out breath, which is horrible. It's one of the worst trainings you can ever do. So you breathe all of the air out of your body, and then you try and do 100 press-ups, or you walk a couple hundred meters.
100 press-ups with
Yeah.
no air.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Holy, I can't even do them with air.
And your body will be screaming at you, but you have got plenty of oxygen in your blood, in your muscles, in your tissues to be able to be just fine. And working out where those levels are is really important. And we've kind of switched instantly to talking about people in freediving because it's something that we're all really interested in. But I think that the physiological adaptations of marine mammals are pretty astounding, and that's what's driven a lot of our ability to understand how human freedivers can push the limits.
Yeah, exactly. So just kind of coming full circle to actually answer your question, because I think you've touched on two really important things, which kind of answer the question. Less the pain, but it's more about managing those gases, managing your oxygen and your ability to push through that kind of carbon dioxide buildup. But also it is about having high myoglobin, more red blood cells, and for species like you mentioned, that our pinnipeds and our cetaceans, they are fantastic at this. Elephant seals, great example, being able to hold their breath for hours on end. Beaked whales have this incredible ability to also stay down for, in some cases, some of the more extreme cases that we talked about before, like the Cuvier, 3-4 hours. It's absolutely phenomenal. So high myoglobin concentration in the blood. For species like Weddell seals, they can carry like twice as much oxygen per kilogram compared to us. And it's this ability to basically have oxygen binding proteins in the muscles. And so, oxygen rich blood, and it just essentially allows them to have more oxygen in their system before they actually need to come back up for air. And there's a number of other really cool adaptations as well. So you might have heard of bradycardia. So for a lot of the species that I've just mentioned, heart rate really slows down, reducing the amount of oxygen consumption, which again, if you compare it to humans, and some of the things that Steve's talking about, you're really calming yourself down, you're slowing down some of your basic system to be able to kind of go through that oxygen more slowly. And then there's something else that happens in these species as well, called peripheral vasoconstriction. So that's a blood flow to non-essential organs kind of also slows down. So again, preserving oxygen for all those really important organs that you need, your heart, your brain, allowing you to stay underwater for longer. So very efficient at using and storing oxygen, way better than humans. But as Steve has said, it's allowed us, by us exploring that and pushing those boundaries, it's allowed us to learn about the species that do it best, and they do it incredibly.
One of the big psychological turnarounds as well is that we kind of imagine that our scuba tank, for want of a better word, is our lungs and the air that's in our lungs. And it really isn't. When you become a freediver, you learn that the oxygen you really need is in your blood and in your muscles, and it's even more so for marine mammals. So you look at a sperm whale, which is one of the deepest diving animals, they have about 8 minutes at the surface doing a breathe up, and in that breathe up they are just blasting out all of the old carbon dioxide from their body, sucking in the oxygen, and then before they dive they get rid of it. They breathe out essentially because they've got all the oxygen they need in their tissues. Were they to have a great big full lung, that would compress and it would also be really dangerous. Some sperm whales will actually get the bends, much like a human diver will. I mean, we could do a whole podcast, couldn't we, on
breathing,
the
breath hold.
adaptations. Yeah, exactly.
And how my breath hold is terrible.
You just made me think when Lizzie was saying how her breath hold wasn't that great, but does size matter, Steve?
You know, I'm friends with the legendary Tanya Streeter. Tanya Streeter, one of the greatest athletes of all time. She was at one point the absolute record holder in freediving for both men and women. Her records were superb, and she's tiny. She's very, very similar size to you, Lizzie. But you see, the most incredible thing that she can do is she can expand her ribcage and her lungs and suck in her diaphragm. It almost doesn't look human what she can do when she's taking in the air. And she does this process called packing, where she's just loading up her tissues with it. I mean, it's phenomenal to see. And, you know, diving down into the eternal darkness to 200 meters below the surface in the extreme no limits kind of freediving, which, you know, isn't so much done anymore. And people are swimming down to over 100 meters without fins and weight, just doing the breaststroke down to 100 meters. I mean, it's just insane.
It is like superhuman.
I've just asked someone to Google what the recent record is. What is it, Lizzie?
It's 29 minutes and 3 seconds set by Vitamor Maricis in June this year.
And that's with oxygen, right? That's supplementary oxygen.
That's oxygen-assisted static apnea.
Wild.
Ridiculous.
Just wild.
So good.
That is way past what the majority of dives would be for dolphins and seals and hippos. Way past.
Imagine if you gave them oxygen saturation, though.
That's our next
There's a scientist out there
study.
who's tried it. Seriously.
Yeah, probably. Right, let's move on. Our final question for you, Steve, is from Archie Basford, age 8, and his mum via email. My son Archie and I were discussing and wondering why dinosaurs evolved into birds. What happened that pushed them this way? We wondered if it was less food that made them smaller. Archie's always been a massive Steve Backshall fan, and now is a fan of all of you too.
Oh.
We love the show and listen to it on the way to school as I navigate the roads in Qatar where we've just moved.
Wow. Fantastic. Amazing stuff. And yeah, super question. Really important and interesting area of research. So it was kind of in the 1990s that, you know, we started to understand that some of the theropod dinosaurs in the Jurassic, I think it was around about 160 million years ago, started to branch off, and there were descendants of those theropods. When I say theropods, you know, I'm talking about the two-legged dinosaurs that run around scoffing stuff. You know, Carcharodontosaurus, it is Bletosaurus, T-Rex, and they were starting to evolve into completely feathered proto-birds, things like Archaeopteryx. And then those would have developed into things which are much more recognizable to today's modern birds. So things like Confuciornis and Anchiornis. And that was long, long before the heyday of the dinosaurs in the late Cretaceous and the asteroid that wiped them out of the KT boundary. So there were already small feathered birds that had, you know, lost the teeth from their beaks and were, you know, pretty much indistinguishable from modern birds while the dinosaurs were around. How they survived the extinction event that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs, which is how we, you know, quite often talked about the dinosaurs as opposed to living birds today, that's kind of the big question. And it probably is down to size. You probably hit the nail on the head. You know, we know that the reason the crocodilians and the turtles and the lizards and the snakes managed to survive is that they could escape effectively, that they could get away from all of the impacts of this absolutely catastrophic event where the larger dinosaurs could not. Well, it's probably exactly the same for the smaller birds. They had the ability to hide away in the most extreme temperatures. They wouldn't have needed as much big food, And so some of them survived, and then they started to diversify. And, we are in the absolute most triumphant period for bird life now. Well over 10,000 different species, ranging in size from, your tiny little fairy wrens and fairy terns all the way up to the ostrich. And yes, modern taxonomists would call those avian dinosaurs because they are so closely related. And, you look at the skeletons, you look at the way that the hips are orientated, you look at everything about them, and they are phenomenally similar. So, you've kind of hit the nail on the head, really, Archie and Mum. What a wonderful question. And something that we are still learning about now. There's still so much for us to find out about this incredible connection between the dinosaurs and our modern birds.
Beautiful. Beautiful question, beautiful answer. Well done, Max. And that's it for this week. Please do send your questions along to questions@that'sjustwild.com and we'll answer them on the show.
That's Just Wild is an original Fresh Air production. The producers are Eva Higginbotham and Emma Crampton. Your support is really welcome. So you can follow us on your favourite podcast app, leave us a review, it makes all the difference to the whole team. And for ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com.
Remember, we're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, the Face of the Moon, and you can also find us at That's Just Wild Pod. Thanks for listening. See you next week.